All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Did a Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Did a Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today we are going to be continuing down the path of the Astrologian by looking into the Nocturnal Sect. Before we get going, as a reminder, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on if you are enjoying this stuff. If you're not enjoying this stuff, do all that anyways, because it helps me. So, yes, please do that. It really, really does help. So, quick refresher on 5th edition class design. In 5th edition D&D, every class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. And in order to do that, they have these things that we call defining features. Defining features are either features that are unique to the class itself, or they are features that the class either gets earlier or has a different way to use than any other class. In order for it to be a defining feature, it needs to show up within the first two levels. So what is the defining feature of the Astrologian? Well, it is draw. Draw, basically, they have what's called a deck of 60, which is just a deck of 60 cards. And they can draw using a handy mechanic called available draws. They have a number of draws they can do per level. And basically, whenever they draw, they roll a d6, and then depending on what the d6 lands on, they have a buff for themselves or the party. And the buffs can be anything from making someone do extra damage per hit, reduce damage they take, get extra attacks, things like that. So the draw itself does take an action, but there are other things as the class levels up that gives you a little bit more variety in your action economy use of draw. But the main idea of draw is it's, for the most part, going to take your action and is going to be a relatively substantial buff for whomever it is getting used on. So, yeah. So, how does the Nocturnal Sect kind of modify all that? Well, let's dive into it. So, quick refresher on just like the Astrologian from Final Fantasy XIV. There are two kinds of healers in Final Fantasy XIV. You have regen healers or hot healers, and then you have shield healers, where one, they have certain abilities that will put a heal over time on you, or a regen effect on you, so that even after the heal hits you, you continue to regain hit points for a set amount of time. Shield healers, when they heal you, they also put a shield that prevents a certain amount of damage. Astrologians can actually be both. They have these stances effectively called Diurnal Sect and Nocturnal Sect. You can't have both of them on at the same time, for the most part. Final Fantasy XIV gets confusing at high levels. And then Diurnal Sect turns the Astrologian into a hot healer, and Nocturnal Sect turns it into a shield healer. So theoretically, if Nocturnal Sect, the subclass here, is designed to emulate the Nocturnal Sect from Final Fantasy XIV, we should see some sort of shielding aspect to it. Let's see with how closely that goes. So, first things first, at level 2, when you choose this, you gain proficiency with one-handed simple and martial weapons, light and medium armor, and you gain 1 extra hit point when you level up. As a bonus action, you may spend 1 draw to help you predict how your enemy will react to your presence. You do not provoke attacks of opportunity until your next turn. So this is a weird thing, especially with how much the Astrologian has kind of been pushed as a healer, to give them martial abilities and the things like that, and then their additional way to use draws is they can avoid opportunity attacks. It sends a bit of a mixed message, because theoretically, if you have an ability that makes it so that you don't provoke opportunity attacks, in general, that tends to mean the class is designed to have a more of a hit and run style tactics. Like monks. Monks have the ability to disengage as a bonus action, which is effectively what Mage of Menphina does. Is it allows you to disengage as a bonus action. So monks have that ability using ki, and that's because they are hypermobile. They're designed to be moving around a lot. So giving them the ability to go in, punch someone and then get out of the way can be a really effective way to play the monk. Rogues are another one that get that. And the big reason rogues have that disengage is they are one hit wonders for the most part. And what I mean by that is rogues with their sneak attack damage, they do all of their damage in one hit, unlike monks where you have to spread it out over 3 or 4 hits and things like that. And they don't need their bonus action for that hit. They can do it on their main action, while as monks have so many other things to use their bonus action for. So the rogue can literally run in, do a crazy amount of damage, and then run out. The Astrologian is not really built around that. Again, the base class is effectively a buffer class. Your defining feature is a buff, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. Like I like it, but with that being the defining feature, giving them the ability to disengage as a bonus action at second level, I just don't see that ever being a good use of your draw. At second level, you have 3 draws. Wasting a draw to disengage as a bonus action instead of to be able to buff someone with something really, really powerful doesn't really make sense. Giving them proficiency with one-handed simple and martial weapons and then light and medium armor, again, is interesting. And I think kind of misses something really, really big. And this is kind of my idea for the entire subclass. And I'll go over it more as we go through it. But Mage of Menphina gives them basically the ability to fight up close and personal. They have a little bit higher armor class, and they can use more powerful weapons. But it doesn't give them proficiency with a shield. Which, if this is supposed to be a shielding thing, like, that would make perfect sense to give them the ability to wield a shield. First of all, it would increase their armor class. Generally, it's going to increase their armor class better than giving them better armor a lot of times, because things like mage armor, which I'm actually not 100% certain they can use it, but it would make sense. I can look. I'm gonna go down and look at the spell lists. Mage armor, Astrologian. Mage armor, yeah. So mage armor itself acts as effectively leather armor. I gotta get back to the page I was at so I can actually remember what I'm doing. Hello, Astrologian. So yeah, mage armor itself acts as effectively studded leather armor, which is going to be better than most light and medium armor you're going to have at level 2. So there really isn't a huge benefit, because mage armor can actually work with a shield. Mage armor doesn't work with light and medium armor. So yeah, I really think if you're going to give additional proficiencies for Nocturnal Sect, I would much rather give them a shield, which opens them up to be able to use feats like Shield Master, which will vastly change how they do it. It gives them an incentive to get closer to allies. And if you were to build your class features around the fact that they can use a shield and no one else, I mean, their focus is one-handed. So being able to use a shield and your astrolabe, which just kind of floats in the air, makes sense. Drawing a card from it. I mean, you could even go as far as to, if you've ever seen any of the astrolabes, they look like shields, like they really do. So you could even go as far as to claim that the astrolabe is the shield. They still have to buy a shield, but they could mount the astrolabe on their shield and draw directly from their shield, and that would be super cool, super interesting, and it would fit better than what we have here. And then the bonus action disengage doesn't work at all. I'll talk about my specific ideas about how to modify this in a bit, but for right now, Mage of Menphina just no. When I do final thoughts, I'll do my kind of idea on how to do this differently. But bare minimum, get rid of the light and medium armor. And they really don't need the martial weapons either. Just give them proficiency with shields, and let them effectively mount their planisphere on their shield. Like that would be really cool, and be able to stow your cards in your shield. Like that would be super cool. And make it work just like any other thing. You have to spend an hour, modifying the shield so it'll accept the planisphere. But once you have that, like it just seems cool. When literally in Final Fantasy 14, the planisphere that they're using, when it's not being used, they store it on their back, literally in the same mounting spot as the shield. So I mean, it just makes sense to give them a shield instead of martial weapons and an armor, and then everything else should be about different ways to use the shield as a way to cast magic and things like that, because it's a shielding thing. So. All right, so that's the second level thing. At 6th level, you get Nocturnal Benefic. When you cast a spell of 1st level or higher that restores hit points of an ally, you may leave a shielding effect on all affected creatures. After the spell is cast, there's a typo here. It says your all affected creatures. I think the your is just a mistake. Sword, if you're watching this, page 41, first paragraph on the left-hand side, under the title Nocturnal Benefic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line down, second word, I don't think needs to be there, but it's definitely grammatically incorrect no matter what it is. So, after the spell is cast, all affected creatures gain temporary hit points equal to number D4, where number is equal to your wisdom ability modifier. You must then finish a short or long rest to use Nocturnal Benefic again. So, effectively, when you cast a spell that restores hit points, they will get temporary hit points equal to, at 6th level, it will be minimum of 18, it may be 20 by then. It's just how it works. So they will either get 4d4 hit points or 5d4 temporary hit points. So a maximum of 16 to 20 temporary hit points, which at 6th level is not a bad amount of temporary hit points. When you get up to 16th level, that's nothing. That will literally stop maybe part of one attack. As I've mentioned before, with these benefits, through the when we talked about Diurnal Benefic, it needed to scale up. And the same thing is true here. I'm also not a huge fan of tying it to an ability modifier, because again, all that does, like you could say it's the number. It means either 4 or 5. As much as it could mean anywhere from 1 to 5d4, it doesn't. It never means that because wisdom is your casting modifier. So what you are saying is it's equal to 4d4, and at 8th level, it's equal to 5d4. That's what that means when you tie it to the wisdom ability modifier. Meaning after 8th level, this ability never gets better. It doesn't improve at all. It is just a static ability. They used it a lot in the PHB because they were transitioning from in D&D Next. Before it became 5th edition, it was called D&D Next. And in D&D Next, they wanted to put a huge emphasis on the attribute scores themselves, to the point where in early versions of the D&D Next, they didn't have skills. It was all attributes. So if you wanted to roll, investigation, you had to roll a wisdom ability check or an intelligence check. But everything was based on your attribute scores. And they wanted the attribute scores to actually mean something, to be something that people were constantly referencing. So with that in mind, it didn't really work well the way they originally designed it, and it kept moving. And that's why it was such a big deal in the player's handbook. However, when it got to actually playing the game, what generally happened is all of these things that were tied to ability scores were tied to the most beneficial ability score for that class. Strength for barbarians, charisma for sorcerers, things like that. And what that turned into in practice is when you built your character, depending on how you built it, you would always start with a minimum of 16 in that. And sometimes you would start with 18 in it, and you can only go to a maximum of 20 in 5th edition, with a few rare exceptions. So in theory, it was meant to, again, provide more of an emphasis on the attribute scores themselves, because in 4th edition, attribute scores had become really disused in general. 3rd edition was the same way. You cared significantly more about your skill values than you ever did about your attribute scores in general. You really only used them during the during character creation and the few times you got to level them up. In practice, it doesn't work that way, and that's why when Tasha's came out, they switched from using attribute scores to tying it to the proficiency bonus, because the proficiency bonus you can't heavy stack in the beginning. Every character is going to start at 2, and then at a set point it's going to move to 3, and a set point it's going to move to 4. So any ability tied to proficiency bonus is going to actually get better as the character levels up, instead of maxing out at 8th level at the latest. I generally am going to say anytime I see tied to a ability score tied to proficiency bonus, it's better, and it allows it to actually level up. And you get more uses of it, because proficiency bonus goes up to +6. Your ability scores only go up to a maximum of +5. So that being said, for the last Benefic and for the last subclass, what I suggested doing was switching Diurnal Benefic and Fortunate Healing, so that you got Diurnal Benefic at 2nd level, and it was tied to your draws, and Fortunate Healing was a 2-and-done ability. I think this works better that way as well. Tie Nocturnal Benefic to 2nd level and tie it to your draws, because again, that's actually going to be more useful than a bonus action disengage, and is actually going to be something that would be useful. It's never going to be better than Bowl, as it's written there. But I also think the die size should increase the same way everything else does. So it starts at a D4, goes up to a D6, and then a D8. So a D4, a D4 at second level, at fifth level turns into a D6. At 11th level, it turns into a D8, and then it just doesn't get any bigger than that because you don't need it to be any bigger than that. So that would mean at that point, you would be able to actually get, 6 D8 is still quite a bit. Maybe just upgrade it to a D6 at 11th level, because 66 is not going to be massive, but it's still a significantly better. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to say, is at 11th level, it goes from a D4 to a D6, so it's just one upgrade. And that will keep it in line with damage and things like that. And again, tie it to the draw, make it at second level. As far as Mage of Menphina, I still think the shield aspect of that should happen at second level. So tie the shield aspect of that to Nocturnal Benefic. And then when we get to 6th level, we actually get the first increase to the shield aspect of it, where 6th level will give you an ability to use your shield differently. Again, when I go through final thoughts, I'll go into more details about that. But that is how I think that should go. Yeah. At 10th level, you get Malefic Attunement. When you make a melee weapon attack, you may cast a spell as a bonus action. You do not have disadvantage on ranged attack rolls if a hostile creature is within 5 feet of you. This is broken. Flat out. The ability to, from what is written here, this effectively gives you the ability to cast any spell as a bonus action as long as you take the attack action. That breaks so many different things. There currently isn't a class that just because they make an attack can cast any spell they want as a bonus action. If I remember correctly, Eldritch Knights do get the ability to, if they make an attack action, they can cast a cantrip, or maybe if they cast a cantrip, they can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. Yeah, and something that really gums up stuff is any of, and again, I have to go back to the spell lists because I have to see if they get access to this particular spell. They don't, but they could multi-class, or if they are if they're a high elf, they can take any of the Bladesinger cantrips, which have you make a melee weapon attack as part of the casting action. So if you take like Green Flame Blade, you'll get to make a melee weapon attack, which allows you to cast any spell you want as a bonus action, even though you're casting a spell as an action. And because it is a cantrip, that means that you get to do all the leveling up damage of a cantrip, plus you get to cast any spell you want as a bonus action. It massively unbalances this class. So, again, what I would much rather see is give them a new way to use their shield in some way, shape, or form. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that. Again, when I do final thoughts, because this subclass basically needs a rework, I'll talk a little bit more detail, my ideas of how to do that. But as it is, Malefic Attunement is massively broken. And is really, really, really easy to exploit, without having to multi-class at all. You literally can just take a feat to give you the cantrip you want. I think Magic Initiate gives you access to cantrips, So you would just need to take the cantrip. Take 1 feat, and now you have a super powerful broken combo. Combine that with, you're going to have to somehow... it also means you're going to have to get a decent attack ability, but since everything else is tied to your wisdom, it's not that hard to have a secondary, either your dexterity or your strength to be decent enough so you can make your attack rolls. So yeah. Finally, at 14th level, you get Lunar Rage. You touch a willing creature or yourself and bless them with the power of Nocturnal Sect. Weapon attacks made by the selected creature deal an additional 2d6 force damage for 1 minute. At the start of each of the affected creature's turn, they roll 1d6 plus your wisdom modifier and gain that many temporary hit points. You must then finish a long rest to grant Lunar Rage again. First things first with this, it doesn't say what kind of action is used to grant Lunar Rage. As it is right now, it is a free action because it doesn't list an action, so you can do it. Anytime you want to, you can just add on an additional 2d6 force damage on weapon attacks. If you combine that with the balance, that means they do 4d6 just bonus damage, plus 2d6 force damage every attack roll. Which means at that point, a creature with both the balance and Lunar Rage on them, let's use a monk, simply because I enjoy monks. Or let's use a fighter, seeing as they use more weapons and monks have unarmed attacks and it gets confusing. So with a fighter, they've got 4 attacks at level 20. So that would mean 24d6 additional damage for effectively 5 turns with the bowl, and then if they get the bowl cast on them again, that's effectively 10 rounds of 24d6 additional damage, meaning, if my math is correct, that's 240d6 additional damage from this 14th level ability. And that's not even counting the fact that they also get temporary hit points every turn, which is useful. Yeah. It's... on its own, it's not bad. But the fact that this will always be combined with the balance makes this absolutely broken. Especially if you were to give it to a creature that dual wielding would get a huge benefit from this. I think it's called Quick Quiver, is a ranger spell that gives them... What the hell just happened? Sorry, my program just went nuts for a second. That was weird. I'm going to really quick look up the spell. Rangers. Sorry, I'm still a massive Power Rangers fan, and I always will be, so... Alright, 5th. Wasn't Conjure of a... Swift Quiver, that's what it's called. So effectively, Swift Quiver allows them to make 2 attacks with a ranged weapon as a bonus action. So they get 4 attacks per turn as long as Swift Quiver is on. Combine that with Sharpshooter, which all bow rangers take Sharpshooter. That would mean they get 40 extra damage from that. Lunar Rage and the balance gives them 24 extra damage, 24d6 extra damage from that, and that's every turn. They can one-shot an ancient dragon pretty quickly here. Yeah, I mean, balance-wise, this is really broken. It doesn't really make sense with the Nocturnal Sect as it's shown in Final Fantasy XIV. I think this to me this just feels like, okay, well, we need 3 subclasses. We'll do one that's focused on healing. We're gonna do one that's focused on DPS, and then we'll figure out the other one. And so this is the quote-unquote DPS one, so they turned it into a martial and magic class, and it doesn't really work. Some aspects are just never going to be used. Nocturnal Benefic, which is kind of the defining aspect of this subclass, is not going to be used at high levels because it just doesn't give enough of a cushion. And can give as little as 5 temporary hit points. It's confusing. It's weird. It doesn't work. It unbalances the class. Yeah. So, final thoughts. Overall, this doesn't really work. However, if we change things up to, instead of this being a martial class, this being a shield-based healer class, we can actually start doing some really interesting things. Like I said, the first thing I think, take Nocturnal Benefic, switch it to 2nd level, make it cost draws instead of being a one-and-done ability. One-and-done abilities aren't good, and it makes much more sense this way. At the same time, that part of Mage of Menphina where they get additional proficiencies, just leave that at 2nd level and give them proficiencies with shields and allow them to basically inscribe their shield with their planisphere or their star globe. Basically attach it to their shield using magic. Make it take an hour of focus or whatever. They do it with magic. It's not a big deal. But so they can now use their shield as a casting implement. Which takes care of the idea of, quote unquote, makes it so they don't have to have War Mage in order to cast in combat with things in their hands. So that's what we do first, is we give them a shield. It's going to increase their armor class and give them a different, kind of way to do that. When we get up to 6th level, this is where the actual ability of Mage of Menphina comes into effect. As a bonus action, the old version was as a bonus action, you get you get to disengage as a bonus action. Not a big fan of that. So thinking about how shields can be used, and combining it with the idea that their astrolabe or their star globe is built into their shield, giving them a bonus action use for that shield that has a limited number of uses, just like the fortunate healing, where they just got a bonus to their healing. What I think this would be cool for is, as a bonus action, you can impart some of the additional defense of your shield onto someone else. Basically, the additional AC your shield provides, you can give to someone else as much as you want. You can give 1 or 2, and if you have a magic shield that gives you +3 to your AC, or +4 or +5, a +3 magic shield will give you a +5. You can effectively just hand as much of that AC over to another character for a set amount of time. Because a minute seems to work well, we'll call it for a minute. The wording you would want to use is, as a bonus action, you can impart some of the additional defense from your astral shield, is what we'll call it, from your astral shield to an ally. The additional bonus, you can transfer some as much of the additional AC you get from your shield to another character for 1 minute. So however much additional AC you would get from that shield, you can transfer. And And then put a little addendum. You can transfer one a minimum of 1 AC from you to them, all the way up to the maximum additional AC you get from that shield, including any magical benefits to AC from the shield. By stating it that way, it does allow. It does kind of ensure that you're not going to be able to claim that. Well, I've got Shield of Faith on, so that's magical shield. So that would I could transfer. No, it has to be directly from the shield itself. So it gives them a benefit to using magic shields. And again, that can be a huge deal. And it gives them an additional way to use their shield that doesn't currently exist in 5th edition. And again, it's just cool. I think it's a cool idea to have an Astrologian that is casting from their shield that kind of turns it on the side and draws like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck from it. I just think visually that's cool. It doesn't really break the game. It gives them something unique. We'll limit it just like we did the other one. It's a 2 and done per short rest. Because again, 1 and done generally doesn't do much. Everything about it is super cool, super fun. And yeah, I like that. Going to 10th level, we don't want to cast a spell as a bonus action. Again, it breaks things way too easily. However, again, if we're going to focus on this as this class is a shield-based Astrologian, any ability should either give them something else they can use their shield for, or somehow benefit their drawing. In this particular instance, I'd like to see something else that happens to that draw effect. When we go back here, Diurnal Sect had light speed that allowed them to cast differently by burning draws. So going back to the kind of casting aspect of this, and using draws in order to do that. What if Malefic Attunement, which you may need to change the name at this point because it won't make a whole lot of sense, but what if it was anytime you cast a 1st level or higher spell? Right now, for Nocturnal Benefic, it requires you to cast a spell that heals. With this 10th level ability, which we're going to call Malefic Attunement, I'm not sure if he wants to change it or not. But what if anytime you cast a 1st level spell, you could use Nocturnal Benefic, and if the spell affects an enemy or it isn't a healing spell, you just have to touch a creature when you immediately after you cast that spell to give them the benefit of Nocturnal Benefic. So Nocturnal Benefic still works at a range. At range as something that puts a shield on. But with this 10th level of ability, now anytime you cast a spell, you can use Nocturnal Benefic. It still costs a draw, so it's still that. So it's going to incentivize you being able to be a little bit more aggressive, which it seems like this was meant to be a little bit more of a DPS style thing. But it'll still keep to the theme of a shielding, shielding Astrologian, and then I just think that works better. Again, not sure if we want to keep calling it Malefic Attunement if we change it to that, but for a 10th level ability, I think that works really well. It doesn't disincentivize using draw. It still gives you that choice between using your action to draw or you're using your action to cast a spell. It just gives you an additional benefit to casting spells now, other than healing spells. So you can do a little bit more than just go around healing and putting shields on people. Now you can attack and still put shields on people. It fits with the idea of them being a little bit more frontline because they do have to touch a creature in order to do it. So it might mean they need to get closer, which is a good thing that they have their astral shield with them. So yeah, finally, for their 14th level ability, we look back at Sun's Fortune, and it simply maximized the healing and allowed them to effectively use a draw action whenever they used their Benefic. I think I like more of the idea of at 14th level, all your shields are maxed. Whatever the maximum amount they could shield for, they did do. I like that. It takes away some of the complications of having to roll dice whenever it happens. It benefits Nocturnal Benefic, which it's supposed to, because that's kind of the defining feature. The only other thing I would want for it being the ultimate ability of this subclass is something to do with shields. And we could simply say that you can impart the thing from Mage of Menphina, where you can give some of your AC bonus to someone else. You can do that to 2 creatures you can touch instead of 1, but it has to be done at the same time. So you do have to have 2 people close to you. Yeah, I think that would be a little bit better than what Lunar Rage is right now. Now, I have completely redesigned this subclass. So yeah, it's definitely going to be different. None of this has been playtested. This is all just stuff I thought of. So obviously there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But overall, I think it fits with the theme of the Nocturnal Sect a little better. It's nowhere near as broken. And it doesn't create weird things where you change a full caster into a somewhat melee caster. And yeah, it gets weird, to say the least. So that's my idea. Whether or not you like it is up to you. Otherwise, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, remember, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to turn the notifications. This is on in the comments down below. First things first, what do you think about my revised version of this class, or this subclass? Like I said, I think the way it's written, it just doesn't work. It starts off as really not useful, and then at 10th level becomes massively powerful, and then at 14th level outclasses any other buffing style class in the game. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the change? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you like the idea of a literal shield healer? Or would you prefer the changes to be a little bit more focused on balancing the martial melee aspect of the Astrologian? Let me know in the comments down below. Another thing you can mention in the comments down below, I only have one more subclass for this. And then I need to choose a new class to cover. So let me know what you guys want to see next in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.